Well, now that we've got that side tangent
Now
out of
that
the
we got
way,
that out of the way, now I'm all
shall
right.
we share our community read?
Let's do it. Oh, this is a good one. This is a really good one. It
Mhm.
is Good Dirt by Charmaine Wilkerson. And I'll set it up first and then we can share what we thought about it because it
Mhm.
is about Abby Freeman. And when she was 10 years old, she heard a gunshot and time stopped. She then saw her brother Baz lying on the floor, surrounded by the shattered pieces of a centuries old jar, and life as she knew it shattered as well. The crime was never solved, and because the Freemans were one of the only Black families in a particularly well off enclave of New England, the case had an enduring voyeuristic pull for the public. And the last thing they want is more media scrutiny. They sort of just want to live on their own. But Abby was engaged to a high profile man, and their romance falls apart without explanation, and they again are in the public eye. And then Abby flees to Paris or to France, only for her past to follow her there. And as she tries to process what's happened, she begins to think about the other loss her family suffered on that day 18 years ago. The stoneware jar that had been in their family for generations, brought north by an enslaved ancestor. And anyway, that's what it's about. I have to confess, I think we picked this. I read Black Cake by Charmaine Wilkerson. I
Yep.
loved that one. And I was like,
Me
okay.
too.
But I have to tell you, I'm like in my head thinking, I don't know if I want to read about a jar. Like, I'm not sure about this family heirloom. Like, how interesting can it be? Boy, was I wrong. Hannah and I have
Mhm.
not talked yet about how we like this book, so I have no clue. I will start by saying I loved it from the start because the pacing was great. At literally like 3 or 5% into the book, you've already witnessed a murder. There's a canceled
Yep.
wedding. There's a shift to Paris or to France. And I'm like, holy cow,
Yeah.
this is really working for me. Like, I'm like, we are on a trajectory. But Hannah, what did you think about it?
No, same exact feelings, especially in the beginning. There's also like some juicy like relationship stuff that happens in the beginning, which is always, well, like kind of in the beginning, like within the first 50
Yeah.
pages or so. And that's always something that will pull me in as a reader. Um, and I don't think I was at any point like turned off by the premise or anything, but I definitely didn't. I think that where my hesitation was is I feel like when you love a book so much by an author, like you're equally excited and nervous to read the next
Yes.
one because
Hmm.
you're like, okay, well, I this was like a 5-star book, so can she do it again? And what I really liked about this reading experience is I could totally tell it was the same author. I think he
Yeah.
was very reminiscent of like even some of the structural things that she did with points of view and like historical context, like just juxtaposed with the mystery. I think that she did that really well, both with Black Cake and with Good Dirt. And I mean, I could just sit here and gush about this book for a while. I loved it. It was 5
Yay.
stars for
Okay, good.
me.
Me
Loved it.
too. Yes.
But what I love the most is how she takes this family history and then all this drama and mystery that's happening and all of the historical context, and she like finds a way to tie all three of those things together, and it makes it not only a book that you can really learn a lot from and kind of gain that again like historical context, but also one that's like propulsive and juicy and
Hmm.
dramatic and wild. So yeah, what were some of the your favorite parts about it?
Yeah, same. I mean, I just can't believe how well she's wove in these multiple narratives. It is a contemporary story, but she also wove in
Mhm.
history, themes of slavery, personal reckonings. Like, you're starting to care about their or you're getting introduced to their ancestors. And it sounds like it would be convoluted and hard to follow. At least for me as a reader, I get fussy with when there's too much going on. I was
Mhm.
never fussy about it, even though the chapters are short. You get a lot of shifting points of view, which I know for some
Yes.
is like, hold on a minute, I'm not sure about it. I think she handled it expertly. I also loved the present day drama. I was not expecting that at all. So I was really surprised and happy to see that. I
Yep.
also think she easily could have made this to where one of the characters in particular is this like supervillain. It would have been easy to like hate them.
Uh-huh.
But
Yeah.
she gave them nuance, and it was like, oh,
Uh-huh.
I mean, I still wanted to throttle this character, but
Strangle
like
them.
it
Yep.
still gave us
Right,
enough
right, right.
nuance to where it's like, okay, there's a lot going on here. It's layered. I think this book delivered everything I like. You got rich storytelling, you got the historical depth, you've got emotional complexity. It's character driven,
Mhm.
but enough it's plotty enough to where I was still listening and very invested. I listened to this over the course of 24 hours, and you don't
Good
need
for
to.
you.
I just was immersed and I had the time, and I'm like around the house doing things. That's always a good sign when I'm like, finding chores to do.
Finding things to do because
Yep,
you wanna keep listening. Yeah.
exactly. So I
Such a good
personally,
feeling.
yes. And I personally can't wait to chat. We've not yet chatted with our patrons about this one in Discord, but I know so many people are going to have a lot to say. I think this might be, I'm predicting that this will be one of our chattiest book clubs yet. And I'm not somebody in the moment who's really good at coming up with book club questions. I usually have to go back and do that. But as I was reading this, I'm like, wait, I want to know what they think about this.
Lots
I
of
want to know what they
questions.
think about that. And we're being vague, obviously, by design. Like we sort of have to, because I want you to discover this on your own, but totally recommend Charmaine Wilkerson. I think this book is fantastic. And even if you're not somebody that does a lot of historical fiction, I think this is a good inroads because it really is half and half, maybe 60-40 present day
Yeah,
and past. But gosh, I really enjoyed it.
me
Any other
too.
thoughts to end with?
No, I just co-sign what you said too, especially about like historical fiction, contemporary mystery. If any of those three novels work for you, I think that this is just a perfect combination and blend of all three of those
Yeah.
things. And I also highly recommend it. Loved
Did you
it.
shed a tear at all? I did.
I got teary eyed for sure
Yes.
at like two
Teary
different
eyed.
points. Yes,
Same.
I got
Okay.
teary eyed at
Nah,
two different points for sure.
we love when that happens. But yeah, let
Me
us know
too.
if you read this one, how you liked it. This one is Good Dirt by Charmaine Wilkerson.
Yay,
The
good
end.
talk.
That's all. That's
Good
all,
dirt, good
folks.
talk.
Good dirt, good talk. Yeah, I know. And what I love too, and I guess I'm like not done, is this book is one where I think most people are going to love it. And sometimes with those books, they don't make the best book club books because you're like, well, we don't have anything else to say. But for this one, I think there's still plenty to commiserate on, discuss, question.
Uh-huh.
There's a lot to it.
No, I think books like this are great though when it comes to like universally bringing book people together. Like I could see this being like
Mm-hmm.
a Barnes and Noble book club book because it
Mm-hmm.
appeals to so many people.
Yeah.
Whereas now I do think that it provides good discussion, but I think even with books like this, or I think about like, well, Black Cake was kind of another one, or like Remarkably Bright Creatures or Lessons in Chemistry. They're like these mass appeal books that are actually really good quality. And I
Yeah.
think that it's really important to have books like that because it brings readers, it makes more people read and it makes it
Yes.
more palatable and accessible while also it's especially obviously I think great when you've got diverse voices doing these books like this too because it's like well now you've got kind of this mass appeal for a story that would probably be really beneficial for a lot of people to read
Mm-hmm.
so love it.
So much of the history component, I was like Googling, I'm like, holy, it's
Mm-hmm.
subtle, man, but it was just very impactful, those aspects. And again, apologies for being so vague, but there were elements to it where I was like, I could read a whole book about this character. I could read a whole thing
Uh-huh.
about this character. Like, just loved it. I'm really impressed. I liked both of her books were 5 stars for me, but I think I liked this one even more
I think I liked it
than
more too.
Black Cake, which is
Me
so
too.
hard to do for a sophomore novel, especially when you like her debut so much. I assume that was
Yeah.
her debut, but anyway.
Yeah. Well, and I've also heard, like, even from publishers that I've heard talk about debut novels and why debut books actually tend to sometimes be the author's best work is because typically that was their first idea. Like, that was their
Yes.
inception. That was their, I've
Mhm.
had this idea since I was 18 and I've always wanted to write a story about it. The debut novel is that very first creative idea that that author had. And then after that, if that book was successful, now they have to come up with new
I
ideas.
know. I can't
And
imagine how
can they
hard that
do it
is.
again?
Mhm.
She did it again.
Yeah,
So
absolutely.
love it.
I love that.